Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this session, which is how to use International Men's Day to drive positive change in the workplace. The talk is exactly what it says in the tin. It's not trying to be complicated. It is just basically talking about what we're going to do. For those that don't know me, I am Daniele Fiandaca. I am co-founder of Utopia. Utopia is a culture change business. We help businesses deliver more inclusive, more entrepreneurial and healthy workplaces. Clients include the likes of Google, Spotify, Nestle, KP Snacks, Rolls-Royce, Levi's. I could keep on going on, but we're very lucky with our client base. I am also the co-founder of Token Man, which is probably more just as relevant to what we're talking about today, and maybe even more so. Token Man I co-founded 9 years ago. It specifically was set up with the view of engaging men and around gender equality, getting them to understand gender equality and inspiring them to become inclusion makers. I actually did this talk last year. I'm not going to tell the story of Token Man. If you're interested in the story of Token Man, please do ask and I'll talk about it separately. But just some housekeeping. If you can have your video on, please do. It's so much nicer for me to connect with you as human beings as opposed to names. Today is going to be interactive. I don't want it to just be a talk. If you've come up and expected just to talk, that's also fine. You can still participate and just listen. Please mute yourself if you're not talking. We are going to have one breakout room in this. So when you go into your breakout room, obviously we want you to unmute yourself. Hands up to ask a question, use thumbs up and thumbs down, and that's either physically if I can see you, or that is also using the reaction buttons. Use chat for questions and comments. It's only me today. I don't have anyone facilitating with me, so I'm not necessarily, I can't promise I'll see them all, but I will look out for them. Also, please open the Google Doc. I'm just popping a Google Doc into chat. In that Google Doc, bear with me 1 sec, I will get into chat. That Google Doc would not only, it just makes it much easier. You'll get all the links that I talk about today, so they're already in the Google Doc, but you will also use it for the breakout rooms. So I'm just going to check. So I'm going to go into the Google Doc just to make sure it's working, and I start to see some of you going in there. So the reason we use Google is a client of ours. The reason why we love Google Docs is because it also means that there's an increased level of psychological safety. You can, so I am seeing quite a few anonymous different types of animals in there. So great, you are in the Google Doc. So I'm going to come back to the presentation. So International Men's Day. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, and let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way. And the metaphorical elephant in the room. So, but some say every day is International Men's Day, right? What I want you to do is pop right into chat all the reasons why we should not be celebrating International Men's Day. Pop those into chat. All the reasons why we shouldn't be. I just want to get them out of the way. I want to make sure that we're focusing on all the reasons we should be celebrating International Men's Day. But let's just pop into chat the reasons that you either heard or people have talked about why we shouldn't be celebrating International Men's Day. And it's interesting, I actually say celebrating, but I actually often will talk about marking International Men's Day rather than using the word celebration. But I think that's a very personal choice. Roy, yeah, it's a man's world. It takes emphasis away from International Women's Day. Yeah, I also understand that because I don't think International Women's Day should just be a day for a start. I always think, yeah. Anything else you put into chat? Yeah, men propagating inequality and toxic masculinity. Yeah, so I understand those issues. Anything else? Most men don't even care or know about it. It's funny you say that. Actually, the men that seem to care, the ones that go, what about International Men's Day? And then people go, well, there is an International Men's Day. It tends to be the people who are actually don't know about it even when they're talking about why is there an International Women's Day. So I understand that. Men have enough privilege. Jamie, I'm going to come. Yeah, thank you. most men at the moment aren't really interested. Yeah, okay, I think that all ties into what I'm going to be talking about today, actually, more than anything else. And we are going to touch actually back on Jamie's comment and around privilege, because I think it's one area. I think people too often, when some of the comments you are making, I'm going to say it now, are you're actually often I will hear these comments relating to people that look like me and have privilege like me, but we're going to talk about this. Men are intersectional, so when we talk about privilege, we have to understand that and understand that the International Men's Day incorporates all men. So I'm going to come into this. We've got those out the way. I understand them. I hear them quite a lot. I try and do my best to respond to them in because I do understand them. I do understand where they come from. So, but today we're going to focus on the positive things. We're going to focus on why International Men's Day should be marked within your organizations and more widely. I'm actually going to focus today on the corporate world. This isn't about, at societal level. This is around the corporate world. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pop into Google Docs. There's a section there. What's the one question you would like answered today? As I said, the reason we use Google Docs, it's anonymous. So, you might have a tough question. It gives you that additional psychological safety. So please go in there. For those that are watching the recording, I will read some of them out. Just to make it a little easier, I'm actually going to share the screen so you can see what people are writing. So please go into the Google Doc and just write in the Google Doc the questions you would like answered today. Yeah, so got people asking the same question, which is good. I think it's thankfully, I'm hoping I will answer one of those questions. But if not, to be honest with you, I've got Kenny on this call and we do a lot of work with Kenny, and I love what Kenny does. So I might be pulling Kenny in to answer some questions as well, Kenny, if you don't mind. So let's go into the screen and I'll talk to you about what I'm going to talk to you about today. So today's talk is the framework for today's talk is why it is important to mark International Men's Day, how we use International Men's Day for positive change. When I say we, I talk about Utopia and Token Man. And then finally one is how can you use International Men's Day for positive change? And ultimately what we do is ultimately around positive change. So why is it important to mark International Men's Day? So the first one, and probably the most important one, is in all the work we do in Utopia, the way that we are successful is we always put the inclusion before diversity. So you'll never hear me talk about diversity and inclusion. I'll only ever talk about inclusion and diversity, because inclusion needs to come first. And inclusion has to be for everyone. Okay. And what does it say to you if you're celebrating every day, but they're just completely ignoring the men? Inclusion has to be for everyone. And when we talk about everyone, I think it's really important, because I think that I do hear it quite a lot, is people making broad brush statements about men's privilege, about it's so much easier for men, but men are intersectional. So a black man is still a man. A disabled man is still a man. A gay man is still a man. And ultimately, when we look at men, they have lots of challenges, and that intersectionality is really, really important. So not everyone has the same amount of privilege. And yes, if you're comparing men versus women, but actually, if you look at some studies, white women are actually the second most privileged. And then there are men that sit behind that in terms of what they do, and also in the work that we're doing every day. So I think it's really important to understand the intersectionality, because there is no such thing as a single issue struggle, because we do not lead single issue lives. Everyone has their own challenges, and it's important to recognize those challenges. And if you look at, so every year we do something cool, and I'll actually, it's not in the links, I'll add it to the links while you're in your breakout space. We do a piece of research every year, and this is from last year's research, and this is looking specifically at masculinity in the workplace and understanding a bit more some of the challenges men face. There is pressure for men to be the breadwinner. So 50% think men of our study are pressured to be the breadwinner, and 51% think men are pressured to put work first over family. So that's over half men are pressured in the workplace to put their work first. And you can imagine what impact that can have on their home life, but also on their mental health. There is a huge pressure on working long hours. 40% believe you'll be more successful if you work long hours. 41% of our survey believe that you'll be more successful if you ensure family life doesn't interfere. So that's 4 out of 10 believe that family life should not interfere with your workplace. What that means is that we get a lack of authenticity. So 42% of men feel they have to mark part of themselves to fit in. 50% of under 35s feel they have to mask part of themselves to fit in. And 49% of Black, Asian, minority ethnic respondents felt that they had to mask themselves to put themselves to fit in. So what we're seeing just a lot of people from different backgrounds finding they have to cover when they go to work, and it's hard to be authentic. And it does result in poor mental health. So 68% of our respondents thought that men being taught to suppress their feelings negatively impact their mental health, and 63% thought men being taught to suppress empathy negatively impacts their mental health. So these are significant figures, and we do see it in the workplace. And there is an argument to say that men are facing a crisis point. And it's something actually we talked about in the panel we did with Kenny just 2 weeks ago. So pop into chat whether you feel masculinity is in crisis, and if so, why? Pop into chat if you think. And when I say masculinity, I am talking broad brush traditional masculinity, and within that, men within that masculinity. Pop into chat. Do you think masculinity is in crisis? If the answer no, do pop in no. But if it's yes, just let us know why. Yes, major crisis. The idea of what masculinity is changing. We are now demanding emotional connection from our partners, telling them to talk about emotions after centuries of suppression. Thank you, Kimberly. Fantastic. It's not clear like it was what a man's role is and also how he should behave. Absolutely. Fantastic. I think some men do not know what they are meant to be. Fantastic. I'm going to ask Kenny, I'm going to ask you to give you a heads up. I know you might, I'd love to hear, I'm going to, as we get to the end of this section, I wouldn't mind actually hearing from you in terms of some of the conversations you're having in your men's circles and in terms of how people are feeling. But let me just finish this section and I'll come to you, Kenny. So just come, listen, I mean, I do from the work that we do, I would say, you know, crisis may be overstated, but I do think men are struggling. Men, that sense of identity, I think, is something that men are struggling with, and actually they don't necessarily have the skills to understand how to go through. And so, you know, what boys need first and foremost is to be seen through a different lens than tradition prescribes. I hate, to a certain extent, having to talk about traditional masculine traits or traditional feminine traits, because I'm perpetuating the idea that they are masculine or feminine. But the reason we have to do it in our work is we have to understand where we've come from and why those traits maybe exist and the damage they do. You know, we do have, you know, very big conversations happening around Me Too. Again, you would have seen off the back of Sarah Everard, you know, the hashtag Not All Men. I am proud to be part of a group that actually responded to this by actually creating a group called Yes All Men, and recognizing that actually if we're going to create change and we're going to create safety, that all men have to be part of that change. But we are seeing this kind of pushback. And it's no longer acceptable to say boys will be boys. You know, we are starting to see a shift in understanding what the negative impact that may have. And I think this quote here, I think, sums it up brilliantly. We used it to actually promote the panel that Kenny was on. We spent the past 50 years discussing what it means to be a woman. Women have examined their relationships, their identity, their sense of agency at home and at work. And now, maybe for the first time, we're at a moment where men could have the same opportunity to redefine themselves. But I worry that we aren't giving men or women the resources they need to get there. And I think that's a very good way of summarizing where we are at now. Kenny, I'd love you to come in and just maybe talk about, you run, for anyone that doesn't know Kenny, he has been called the Man Whisperer. He has been doing an amazing job over he's been doing men's groups forever, but since COVID, he's been doing one every day to support men. So I'd love to just hear some of the experiences you're having in your discussions.
I feel the biggest crisis that men come up with is, I am not like that. What masculinity is seen as has got no space for me to be me. And I can't be that lie, or I can't hate myself for not being like that. So I would say authenticity is what people need, space for us to find out who we are, who we no longer need to be, and to grow into ourselves, and more than anything, to learn about boundaries and communication. So we are included in our lives. And I wouldn't say this is necessarily a male thing, but mostly I'm around men. And I would say it's the male who are lost, and going from lost boys, irrespective of age, into self-aware men, which is a very different stage in life and has nothing to do with age.
Great. Fantastic, Kenny. Thank you so much. And the final one, which is, so important, which is why we started Token Man, is change can only happen with men involved. This is, my first 4 years of Token Man tended to involve being in rooms like this. This was actually taken, the brilliant book called Power Up. But I found myself in the first 4 years in rooms where I was the only man. And yes, there were a few spatterings. You can see other men. But what I wasn't seeing is I wasn't seeing men in the conversation. And actually, if men aren't in the conversation, especially when in still so many sectors, men have the influence. How can we create the change? This is Chloe Thompson, one of the first talks I ever went to, actually, when I started Token Man. And she talked about no minority group in history has made real cultural change without the support of the majority group. So we have to engage the men. And what I'm hearing and what we're hearing in the workplace, we do listening circles for our clients. So we go in and we get to hear how different groups are feeling. What we're hearing resoundingly, without exception, when we go into businesses, we are starting to do men's only listening groups. And we're hearing the same thing from them all, which is, what about me? What about me? What does it mean for me? And what happens is, as people, and I was on a panel the other day for the FT, they talked about diversity fatigue, people going, I'm just sick of this stuff, is people are saying that because they actually just feel they're not part of it. So we have to bring men into the conversation so they can start to understand the positive aspects of change, because we are talking about change. And as Kenny talked about, a lot of these constraints, the patriarchy actually harms everyone. And so we have to understand that and get people to understand that so we can take everyone on the journey. So I'm going to briefly talk about, and this session is much more about inspiration. And I actually want you to, I've included within it a workshop so you can all meet each other and talk about the things that you are doing yourselves, or actually come up with your own ideas. Because ultimately, I know International Men's Day is only 3 weeks away, but we also live in a very strange time where, I know promoting events, actually, if you're doing something virtually, for example, people only start actually buying tickets for 2 weeks to go. So, there is still time for you to do stuff. There's absolutely time for you to do stuff. And I'm hoping you come out of this talk recognizing that you do need to do something, and actually with an idea of something you can do either individually or at a business level. So I'm going to just talk about how we're using it. So we're running Masculinity in the Workplace on the 19th of November. The topic is Allyship and Beyond. And it's funny. The reason beyond is because we are trying to redefine actually what allyship is. Allyship for us at Utopia, allyship is not as a woman gets spoken over at a meeting, stepping in and saying, sorry, Fiona, you were saying, that's just being a good human being. That's being a good leader. Okay, allyship for us is changing the culture. So if you're not changing the culture, you're not truly an ally. I don't know whether anyone on this call has been to Masculinity in the Workplace. Kenny, I'm hoping you can join us, and your invite to the lunch is coming today. Masculinity in the Workplace consistently has more white men attending than any other diversity inclusion event. Bravo, now use it to drive change. That's what someone kind of threw at us in 2019, which I absolutely love. I'm reminded of this every time we do anything around the event. So here are some of the issues that will be covered. I'm not going to go through them all, but fundamentally is, what does being a better ally to women and non-binary people actually mean? How do we get beyond the current allyship narrative, which often strengthens the status quo? And how do we support the men in doing the work on themselves that is invariably part of any solution? Okay, so that's and you can see the top ones are all about feelings, engaging men, and actually looking at the responsibility that men face for many of the reasons you said at the beginning. For that privilege, we all have to understand what privileges we have and what responsibility that puts on us to create change. We have some amazing speakers. I'm so looking forward to Iman's done an amazing series on The Guardian, talking to men and looking at masculinity. So I can't wait specifically for Iman to talk. But we have some incredible speakers, and there are more speakers than this. And we have some incredible partners. So this is despite COVID, we actually do have. I'm proud to say we have the most partners we've ever had, and we actually have about 6 that are lined up for next year already. So it is starting to grow, and it does feel. I'll be honest. This year is the year that I've had the most demand in terms of people wanting to do things around International Men's Day. It does feel that there's a sea change. We also do research every year to get a better understanding of the workplace. I'm going to put the link into chat now. Again, it is in the Google Doc. But this year we're doing something, we're super excited about this. So we're looking at how men and women interact, and it is specifically on men and women. So it is quite binary, but it's specifically looking at where those interactions break down in the workplace. And there are actually 3 key areas. There's extensive research around these 3 key areas, and they've come up. They interact differently when it comes to collaboration, decision-making, and conflict resolution. We're going, for the first time ever, we're going deeper to understand why and what those differences are, so that people can get a better understanding of how they can interact better in the workplace. So super, super excited about the research we're doing around that. I will also pop it into chat. The final one is internal workshops and talks. We're running, as I said, we've never been busier. These are some of the workshops we do. If you're interested, do please get in touch. You will get a copy of this deck at the end of this. And we have specifically have 4 people in terms of inspiring stories in terms of speakers this year. So let's go on to you, because this talks about you, to be honest, more than anything else. How can you use International Men's Day for positive change? I'm going to put you into groups. So I'm hoping you can come off camera and chat, but I'm going to pop you into groups. I'm going to pop you into 3 groups. And I'm just going to give you 5 minutes. I'm going to put you into 3 groups. Yeah, I'm going to move it into 3 groups. I'm going to give you 7 minutes in your groups. 7 minutes. I want you to just go in, and I want you to discuss what you're doing. Talk about what you're doing, either as an individual. Fiona, thank you. No worries on the clash. Hopefully you can get the recording. But for those, just talk about what you're doing, what the things are that you have been doing in your businesses, you're planning, or maybe things that you're thinking of as a result of doing this workshop. So I'm going to give you 7 minutes. Say hello to each other. Say where you work, so people get in context, and then just discuss what you're doing. So I'd love to see digital thumbs up or physical thumbs up to make sure that all makes sense. I'm seeing cameras coming on, which is great, fantastic. I'm going to put you in your rooms now. I'll see you in 7 minutes. And actually, before I forget, do please capture, there's a section on the Google Docs. Could you capture, it's on page 2, could you capture some of the thoughts? So if you can do it either individually, if someone can't go in, if you could capture for them, that would be great. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. While you're sharing, I'm just going to pop a couple of links so the research links now into chat, and I'll also put the event link as well into chat if anyone can make it. So I'd love to hear some voices. Who would like to talk about things they heard, things that inspired them, and what they're doing? Who would like to share?
I will, Danielle.
Thanks, Kay.
Yeah, I was with Jamie and with Alicia, and I came clean and said, my name's Kay White, and I was one of the ones that said, every other day is International Men's Day. And I help corporate career women to get promoted, not by being aggressive, but by being braver and more courageous. And it can be threatening, not that they're intending to be, but we were just saying how actually, and Alicia made a really good point about you have to include the men at the start, otherwise it can be perceived as, you know, so threatening, it can lead to the opposite of what you're trying to do.
Very good. Thank you, Kay. Thank you for sharing that. And that we do see that a lot. We do see that exactly that opposite of people not being engaged. Who would like to add on that or talk about things that you talked about?
I was really pleased that we, or one of the people in my group, named the expectations and pressures from men. And in my words, pardon me if I've got this wrong, not just the providing and the protecting, but the emotional availability and providing a community and everything else, going into war one way or another without the tools to self-care and be able to take care of, you know, self and others while being on a mission, you know.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny. Very good. Anyone else like to hear some more voices, especially what are people going to do as a result of what maybe you do differently? We're going to talk about that afterwards, but is anyone inspired to think about, okay, what can we now do on International Men's Day? I'd love to hear your voices. Okay, great, thank you. So what I'm going to do now, and do feed them through. Lucy, I don't know whether you came off mute. What's that? No, I'm gonna just share a few things that you could do. Okay, just some inspiration points. Then we'll just go to questions. But if you've got anything else that you want to share that you're doing, to be honest, it's good for us to know as well. I can using Token Man. If you're actually doing a wider event, more than happy to share it. And I'm gonna share some final ideas. So, 5 things you can do for international. Run your own International Men's Day panel. It is so, and again, it depends where you are on your journey, but if you're doing International Men's Day for the first time, we would often suggest that as long as people are happy, is to focus around an issue that we know is impacting most men in the workplace, and that's mental health. So mental health should really be your first point, so that when you are talking about inclusion for everyone, is you are, whatever you're doing it with the basis of actually supporting those men within the organization who invariably are experiencing from some kind of mental health. And don't get me wrong, everyone, I think it's stats showing that 50% of people in the UK have, in the last 12 months, experienced some form of burnout so everyone is experiencing these things. You know, the last 18 months has been really tough for everyone, but actually looking specifically at some of the challenges that men face. And we do know that men do find it more difficult to find the support infrastructure. They don't have the tools, as Kenny just talked about, to necessarily go in and actually, I don't want to use the word fix, but, you know, care for themselves and look after themselves. So one thing you can do is run an International Men's Day panel. I know it's been really useful for companies. Listen, I would love you to join us and bring more men to our Masculinity to the Workplace event. We have now clients, Coca-Cola European Pacific Partner, have supported us for 5 years, and they will now talk about it being one of the key elements of their inclusion diversity strategy, because what they've enabled to do is they've actually got men really engaged and really, I think 2 years ago was probably one of my proudest moments when I had Richard Schmidt, who heads up factory in Sidcup, and he had 3 of his team leaders in the audience, and I kind of went, do you know what, we can really create change and get people to engage in a way they wouldn't have engaged otherwise. So do come along and bring some men's masculinity in the workplace. We are hoping to be physical. There is also a virtual panel, but if for any reason guidance change, we'll just flip it into being virtual. I do think there's it is an opportunity. That's why I talk about marking. It is an opportunity to put a spotlight on the men that are already leading positive change. And doesn't mean, and I've put a spotlight rather than celebrating, but we do need to start talking about the people who are showing the way, so that people can see a different way. I think that's, again, I'm going to go back to Richard Schmidt on the stage, 2 years ago. Richard is one of the most amazing men. I love him as a human being. I love him as a leader, but seeing a man who actually in his early 20s often found himself in fights, got himself in a really, really dark place, seeing how he's transformed and what a difference his life is now, and what it means for him to be a father, just gives other people hope, and actually gets them to see what their journey could be, and how different can look, because often people don't understand and can't see how different looks. Again, I've talked about this. Use the data to recognize the challenge your male staff are facing so they feel included, or simply ask the men in your team how they are feeling. And when they say okay, ask the follow-up question, which is, are you really okay? Tell me a bit more, what's the last 6 months been like? So, getting people, and again, they're not necessarily going to be ready to do that, but actually, as you get it more into people's lexicon, I think it just becomes easier to be able to actually start to open up. And the other one to think about is a group of creating men's groups in your business to allow men to share their feelings, or a father's group to talk about challenges of balancing work, family. I think the low hanging fruit for me, so Channel 4 are the first company I've seen that has actually created a men's employee resource group. I was at the launch last month. I'm not sure, I can't see how it's going, but I do think they were brave enough to say, do you know what, we do need support for our men. I think you can only really do that if if your employee resource groups are mature enough to have provided the right support to other groups. Because as we talked about, yes, men as a group are, if you take them separately, are the most privileged. But I do think there is a need for fathers, a real need for fathers. We did our first ever event was actually a fathers in the workplace event, and we were told no one would turn up, and it was 80% men. We nearly sold out. We got 150 people, and the feedback we got from everyone is they were having conversations they'd never had before. And fathers just don't have the same opportunity to actually have the support infrastructure or the conversations you'll normally have. So that's one thing you could think about doing around International Men's Day, or facilitate just men's circles. Someone like Kenny, if you want Kenny's details, please feel free to link in, or I can give you his details. But Kenny also runs men's groups within organizations. So, at that Token Man level, we have a lot of people that we can help bring in to support you wherever you need it. This is a quote I heard 3 years ago, and I just think it's so interesting. In order to emancipate women, you need to liberate men. I think it's just such an interesting quote. And actually, a lot of the work that we're now doing is engaging men. Fundamentally, Token Man, let's be really clear, Token Man sole purpose is to drive, and I think someone talked about the questions, is to drive gender equality in the workplace. Okay, and in most workplaces, that means providing a much more equitable workplace for women. Okay, but the way that we're doing that is by engaging men first and foremost. And we can only engage men if we get a better understanding of how they think, what the challenges they are, and actually get them to understand that we want to bring them in, and we can help provide support so they can go on the journey that they do need to go on. As an aside, I run something called a Token Man Brain Trust. It's for C-suite leaders. I have about 15 C-suite leaders. We only launched it last month. And again, sorry, male leaders. And without fail, all of them are struggling. when we talk about inclusion and diversity, they're struggling because often they don't have the tools in order to create the change they need. So they do need support, and that's partly what we're doing with the Token Man Brain Trust. So before I'm open to questions, if anyone has questions, and I will stop the recording just after we do, could you just pop into chat, into Google Docs, just pop into Google Docs your commitment coming out today. For those that are watching it, there are the links. You can see the links. We'll send the links across. I'm just going to pop in. This will be live so people can see it. Pop into the one thing you commit to doing differently as a result of today's talk. For those that can't get into Google Doc, do feel free to pop into chat, and I can cut and paste it in. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. Finding something I want to introduce for international and do some research, my own network of men. 100%. Listening is the first thing that we need to do. Be open-minded and encourage men to express their feelings. Excellent. Very, very good. Does anyone want to come on? I'd love to. I know we've got some chatting. Does anyone want to come off? Start the journey. Very good. Start the journey. Okay, show my tools for my ebook. Perfect. I'm just going to put that in from Kenny. Thank you, Kenny. Do you want to just come on? Do you just want to come on? Actually, voice that over, Kenny.
Yeah, over lockdown we've been holding the groups every day, and I wrote an ebook basically so I can share my tools, not just for men, for everyone. So feel free, if you'd like me to send you a copy. I just emailed you with a link to it because I wanted to do it through you rather than,
That's fine. I'm just seeing if I can get it now, if I can put it in. But if not, I'll make sure it's in the links that you get sent afterwards. Thanks. So I'm gonna just stop. Thank you for everyone if you have caught up and you've tuned in. Thank you. Do feel free to connect on LinkedIn.